Hello and welcome to KCS Integrated Health and Wellness. My name is Kira Staggs and I am a board certified health and wellness coach. What you're about to watch is the second in a series of interviews that I'm doing with various practitioners of alternative and complementary healthcare modalities. I'll be speaking with Molly Shaw today. Molly is a licensed acupuncturist and traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. Molly received her Master's of Science in Traditional Chinese Medicine from the Colorado School of Traditional Chinese Medicine in Denver, Colorado. She's licensed as an acupuncturist in the state of Colorado and is also nationally certified through the NCCAOM. Molly also holds a Bachelor's of Science in Animal Sciences and Zoology from Colorado State University. She has been in private practice in Denver since 2005, where she treated a wide variety of conditions with a special interest in reproductive and women's health. Molly was previously an assistant supervisor at the student clinic at the Colorado School of Traditional Chinese Medicine, where she helped to supervise students by overseeing their treatment plans and their acupuncture treatments provided to the public. Molly is a member of the American Acupuncture Council and a professional member of the Acupuncture Association of Colorado. In 2015, Molly passed the exam to become a fellow in the American Board of Oriental Reproductive Medicine. I can't wait to hear what Molly has to share with us about her own personal experiences with traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and how she has been able to translate that into her practice and her relationship with her clients. With that being said, these videos are for educational and informational purposes only. If you have not watched the About Me video for this YouTube channel, please do so. These videos are not to diagnose or treat any particular conditions, although you might find some information is applicable to your certain circumstances. If that is the case, please discuss any treatments or any avenues that you might like to take with your own personal healthcare provider. All information that can be referenced will be put in the description of each individual video with these amazing professionals. So you will have access to research papers, any documentaries that we are referencing, or any particular aspects that might be being talked about right now in more depth in certain other circumstances with other professionals. So we will be linking that in the descriptions as follows. So with that being said, I would love to go ahead and introduce Molly, and we will go ahead and get started with our discussion. Molly, thank you so much for meeting with me today. I want to let you know again how much I appreciate you taking your time to discuss this with us and share all of the knowledge and information that you have and your expertise on getting a little more information out to the public about acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So why don't you just give us a little bit about what got you interested in traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture?
Well, back in the early 2000s, I was having chronic tension headaches, like every day, all day long. And out of desperation, I went to an acupuncturist because Western medicine couldn't do anything for me. And I went to an acupuncturist, and he basically cured me of my headaches that I was having for every day for 3 months straight. And I was so astonished, surprised, and fascinated by how that came about. And so I set about studying it, trying to understand how acupuncture works and how and why it gave me the relief that it did. And so I got excited about offering that to other people. So in March, I visited acupuncturist, and that fall, I applied to acupuncture school. And the following year, I started school. So back in 2001, I started acupuncture school and never looked back. And I specifically wanted to kind of, well, how do I say this? When I started acupuncture school back then, it was not a widely studied medicine, and most of the people, when we went around the room introducing ourselves and why we were there, it had everything to do with their own personal experience and their own journey of health and healing, which I found was really fascinating, to like how we all came together to study it. And it was cool, because none of the people in the room, or very few people in the room, decided to study acupuncture because it was like some kind of mainstream medicine, or really it wasn't even popular at the time, but it was gaining popularity and people were getting more interested in the medicine. But it was really through their own personal experiences that made them want to investigate further, and including myself.
Right, it opened up your own curiosity about why this modality worked for you, and
Yes.
how incredible the impact was from your personal experience. So you already had that like foundation.
Yes.
Amazing. So you went to acupuncture school, and then you decided to get a master's in traditional Chinese medicine, or was that
When you go to acupuncture school, that is the degree you're seeking, is the master's. And now they have doctorate programs, so you can extend your education into a doctorate program, which I have no desire to go back to school.
I totally understand, right? You're happy where you're happy. Going back to school is not always the most appealing. I actually am having that personal struggle myself.
Right? And the older you get, the harder it is to want to go back to school. I'll just leave that up to the younger folks.
That's fair. But you say that you didn't continue your education, but you really did. You got a specialty in reproductive medicine, correct?
That is true. In 2015, I became a board certified, the Acupuncture and TCM Board of Reproductive Medicine. I took their board exam and passed that. And so now I can specialize. I have specialized in women's, well, mainly women, but men and women's fertility issues, just to offer a more gentle, less invasive treatment options for all sorts of women's health issues, which I found is lacking in the Western world, or Western medicine. Most of their treatment options are really invasive and harsh, sometimes just from medications or hormones, or all the things with lots of side effects. So it's nice to offer something else that actually, in some instances, is very complementary to Western medicine, because I think neither medicine is superb, I would say, on its own, but together you can provide really more comprehensive healthcare if you combine Eastern and Western medical perspectives, because you get more of the whole picture.
It's amazing what you're saying right now, because you're actually describing one of the main concepts of TCM, right? Yin and yang. And Western medicine tends to be very yang. They want to go after the symptoms, they want to go after fixing the actual problem. And Eastern medicine is very yin, very much more a holistic kind of, let's bring back everything into alignment, where Western medicine is very yang, very aggressive towards symptomology, and has, like you mentioned, a lot of side effects sometimes from the hormones and things like that. So since we're talking about yin and yang and traditional Chinese medicine concepts, they are very different than Western medicine concepts. what can you talk to us about some of the basics of traditional Chinese medicine?
So traditional Chinese medicine is an umbrella term for, there's 5 other modalities that are under there, which acupuncture is one of them. And then there's moxibustion, cupping, tui na, which is uh, Chinese therapeutic massage, and herbal remedies, and gua sha, which is a scraping of the skin to increase blood flow to an area of pain, or along the meridians to help with conditions like asthma or just lung issues, or but mostly used for pain conditions these days. And so, there's acupuncture is just the most widely known of all the traditional Chinese medicine modalities. And it's the most widely studied one.
Yeah, there's been some really, really good information that's come out recently. Well, I say recently, in the last 10 years, right?
Right.
Probably 15 years. That's really giving a lot of insight into acupuncture. I got really excited about acupuncture when I was going through one of my courses in complementary medicine. And I was also going through human anatomy and physiology. And when they started talking about the meridians that are utilized in acupuncture and oriental medicine, and I was looking at the maps of the nervous system in the body, I noticed that a lot of the main meridian points were very close to large bundle branches of the main nerves. And it made so much sense to me then, because I heard a lot about how like traditional anatomy and physiology things don't really coordinate, or they didn't feel like they really coordinated with the meridians in acupuncture and Chinese medicine, but I could see the connection. And it started to really intrigue me, I guess. So can you talk to me a little bit about what is the foundation for acupuncture? What is it doing when you're placing the needles?
So acupuncture is based off of utilizing the body's 14 main meridians, and there's specific acupuncture points along those meridians, and each point has different functions. And so we utilize those functions to basically manipulate the body's energy to restore the balance in the body between the yin and the yang, and to optimize health or relieve pain or inflammation, or just create a sense of overall well-being. Because in Chinese medicine, the thought is that, or the belief is that when the body's qi is out of balance, then you have disease and illness that takes over. So that is how it is viewed why it's viewed as a complementary medicine, to bring the body's balance back.
You used a special word, and I'd like to talk about that word. You said qi. Can you talk to me about qi and what qi is, and how Chinese medicine uses qi to diagnose and bring the body back into balance?
All right. So if you want to think about qi as it's the driving force that drives every cellular and organ activity in the body. It drives the blood to move forward. It drives the nerves to conduct their electricity and send signals to the brain. So it's like the basis for all of your bodily functions. And when you stick a needle in an acupuncture point, you can manipulate the energy to increase or decrease the qi through that point, to relieve blockages. And they say where there's blockage, there is disease or pain. And so you open up the blockages, or you change the way that the energy is moving through the meridian if it's too much or if it's not enough, to restore the balance in the body and into that acupuncture point to relieve the pain or the symptom that the patient is experiencing.
No, that's perfect. That's great information. So when you're choosing the different meridians that you want to utilize, what are some of the diagnostic methods that you use in order to find out what you need to open or what you need to close?
So we do glance at the physical body, just overall, what does the person look like? How are they standing, sitting, holding themselves? That's a pretty cursory one. But then we also look at the tongue and the pulse. And with the tongue, we have the patient stick out their tongue, and then we look at the different areas, because there's actually a tongue map that you can look up online, but it maps out the different organ systems on the different areas of the tongue. And so you can use that as a basis for diagnosing, but it's typically used more to pull together your diagnosis and confirm your diagnosis that you have running in the head just from talking and looking at the patient. And there's different organ systems and different areas of the tongue. So we look at size, shape, and tongue coating, how thick, how thin the tongue is, how swollen, what color. Color is a big one, because you can have pale tongues to red tongues to purple tongues, and that will give us an indication of what is happening internally in the patient. And so it kind of helps you bring together your diagnosis. And then the other form of, or the other tool we use, is pulse diagnosis. And that one is more complicated. But basically, we take 3 fingers and place it on the person's wrist, and we feel for the rate, which is what most Western medicine clinicians do, but we also look at or feel for quality of pulse. We use 3 fingers because there's 2 paired meridian or organ systems associated with each finger position. So there's 6 pulse positions on each wrist. Left side and right side have 2 paired organ systems, and they correspond to the 12, well, actually the 14 meridians in the body that you can get from the pulse. And that also gives us an idea of what's going on internally with the meridian systems in the body, and how wide, how thick, how short, how long the pulse is, how strong or how weak, helps us determine which organ systems are struggling or which organ systems are overactive. And so that can help us determine which acupuncture points that we want to use to help this patient.
And that comes back to both of our backgrounds, right? I know in Western medicine, I don't know, and maybe my experience is isolated, but I've never had a doctor in a wellness exam in Western medicine feel my pulse. Like I've had them listen to my heart with a stethoscope to check for rate and check for murmur, but I've never had a doctor actually feel for my pulse. But we do it in veterinary medicine all the time. And we can tell from an animal's pulse and where we're taking it if we have some pretty severe disease going on, from pulse quality, the volume of the pulse, whether it feels strong, whether it feels thready. So it makes sense to me that you would use that as a diagnostic tool. And obviously, the different sides of the body are going to have different areas where the blood flow is pooling back to the heart. It's coming from different areas in the body. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating just how much information you can glean by taking someone's pulse and looking at someone's tongue. Um, I was skeptical about that at first too, because my background started out in very heavily in Western medicine, and being as a veterinary technician for 20 years. But you're right, like in the animals, we use it more because they can't talk to us. But I think that we lose that connection in human medicine because we can talk to the person and they can tell us what they think is going on. But sometimes that's not as accurate, just from their own either biases, belief systems, or you know, denials, that they may not be able to tell you some of the or answer some of the questions that you have, just because they have no idea, or they never paid attention to it, they never knew to pay attention to it, they didn't know what that was important. And so sometimes that's not as accurate of a background information as you can get, but by taking someone's tongue or taking someone's pulse and looking at someone's tongue, you can kind of piece together more information about that person, and even things that they may not be aware of in
Right?
themselves.
Like a yeast infection. If they have an overgrowth of yeast in their stomach, you're going to see that manifesting probably in their tongue, right? That's
Right.
not necessarily something they would even be aware of, because maybe they have just always had a little bit of indigestion after they eat and they think that that's normal,
Right.
right? It wouldn't cross their mind to really tell you that because they think it's normal. And one of the things that I try to push with a holistic view of all different modalities is that what is common is not always normal.
Right.
So that makes sense too to me, that you would be able to glean information that people maybe think is normal and it's not. So they don't think to tell you about it. But you can gather that information, right? You can tell how much water they're drinking.
Right.
You can tell if they're dehydrated. You can tell if they have asthma. You can tell if they have GI issues, if they have acid reflux. I think what I remember being told by our TCM professor was that the tongue is the window to all the systems of the body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool to think about that. And I mean, certain smells as well. I know that might sound odd to some people, but I mean, it comes back to veterinary practice too. Like, we can smell if an animal has ketones or if they have uremia or something like that. And I'm sure that those are things that you've carried over as well. Yeah.
Yes. And sometimes it's just like even taste. We incorporate smell and taste into our diagnostic picture. I mean, more or less with people's hygiene these days, smell is not necessarily a very more difficult thing to do, because most people shower fairly regularly, so the odor is not typically something we come across. But back when it was more diagnostic, when showers weren't as readily available and personal hygiene was much different than it was today. But sometimes you still get, it's still helpful. But it's just another indication of what's going on internally. If you can, even use smell of your breath is indicated of what's happening in your digestive system or internally. And so it's a helpful picture. Even palpation, we palpate different areas to see like what the muscle tension, or what do you feel? Is it painful? Is it to the touch? Is it not? Is it soft? Is it hard? You know, those are all indicative of what's happening with the chi in the body as well. So we utilize all our senses to diagnose a patient, which is
Well, and
nice, holistic,
yeah,
right?
there's a really cool instrument now. It's a modern instrument, the oscilloscope. I was reading about that, that they use to read meridians and also coordinate what you're feeling and touching with different things. Have you ever used one of those before?
I have not. I stick to the more like traditional methods, just because they're tried and true and reliable. And me
I
and
feel like
gadgets,
it's cheating, right? It's kind of cheating. They're like rolling it over to technology where, they're like, oh, there's this oscilloscope, so you don't even have to touch your patient. And that's kind of taking away from it. But I think it's cool to like have a verifiable
right?
uh, method. So in case you're like, oh, I got to double check this. But I don't know if I trust machines all that much.
Right. It's
It's
still
like,
such a new technology that maybe if you were stumped as to what to do next or having trouble with a diagnosis or not seeing the results that you want to see or expect to see, then I can see incorporating those gadgets as maybe another tool to help you pinpoint the issue. Um, I'm just more traditional with my practice and just utilize the things I know best, which is just talking to the patient and doing pulse and tongue diagnosis. It's never failed me.
right, right. And you trust, I trust myself more than I trust technology, right? I totally understand what you're saying with that. So, what are some of the chronic conditions that you have seen improved with acupuncture and TCM?
Um, Headaches, headaches of any sort. Um, um, Pain, especially like muscular pain. Sciatica is a huge one we see a lot. Neck and shoulder pain is probably the main condition that I've treated like as often as I can remember, and as that one is such a common complaint. But even as like menstrual irregularities, whether heavy periods, light periods, no periods, irregular cycles, endometriosis, and polycystic ovarian syndrome, and all those things we treat pretty regularly, especially with the specializing in the reproductive health. And as many people these days seeming to need or incorporating in vitro fertilization into their family planning techniques, it's nice to offer some help in like having improved outcomes with IVF, with the use of Chinese medicine, since they're spending so much money on these procedures, and that it's stressful. And so we can offer some stress relief, and we can also offer them improved outcomes in hopes that they can build their family or start their family.
And that must be so rewarding, right? To be helping people with something that has such an amazing impact on the rest of their lives. You actually help people build their family, their future. I think that's got to be really great.
Yeah, it's one of my passions, because like it cuts to the core of so many women, that the difficulty in that arena is such a sometimes debilitating. There's no promise of how long it will take or how you'll get there. And so, just offering encouragement and maybe some peace of mind to some degree, or that they're, knowing that they are doing everything that they can to, start their family or create their family is such a huge thing for so many women, that it's nice to offer some less invasive options other than IVF, or in conjunction with IVF. When we can do whatever the patient wants, most of the time, it's such a nice thing to add to their thing that actually helps them feel better, and improves their health outcome. And so even if we can't help them achieve pregnancy, the one thing we can do is offer the knowledge that they've done all that they can, and their journey is going to be different than what they maybe anticipated, but there's some peace in knowing that, versus like, I wonder if, or how can I, the questions sort of start to be answered, and then they can, continue forward with however their life is with or without children, or even finding a different way to become a mom. And so it just helps them, guide them through their journey.
You're bringing harmony.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? Like, you're helping them find harmony in whatever their outcomes are going to be. And they're able to take whatever steps they need to do in a more balanced way through bringing a holistic picture to what it is, because health is more than just absence of disease, right? It's actually incorporated a lot of different aspects in our lives. And obviously, if you're very stressed, if your diet needs a little bit of change, if your body needs to be brought into balance, helping that seems like that's just always going to give you a better outcome than if you didn't have that support.
Right. And it's just the sense of well-being is huge, especially in such a society today where everything is like go, 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 and stressful, and we don't have much downtime, and we don't have much time to be ourselves and be with ourselves and have that quietness that we need to decompress from all the things. And I don't think that is stressed enough in society as being a necessity. And so people seek acupuncture to try to find that place, or or they didn't even know they needed that place. And then they find acupuncture and discover that, oh, I do need this. I do need the quiet, and I do need some downtime to recover from all the stressors. I think that if we utilize that more, I think we'd have a healthier society and maybe less violent one.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Bringing mindfulness into our health and well-being, and self-awareness too, just like what we were talking about with people thinking that something that is normal for them is not really normal. There are cases of where people have such an amazing amount of disconnect to their bodies that they're literally walking around with tumors the size of grapefruit, and they have been urinating blood for a year, and they think that it's okay. So being able to tune in and have what is acupuncture now, 4,000 years old, 4,000-year-old system, to actually be able to help tune in to what's happening in our bodies. Yeah, you're actually kind of doing a meditative practice while you're getting your treatment, right? Because you have to stay still, you're connecting to your breath. You don't really want to move because I've had acupuncture treatments before. I love them. That helped when I herniated the disc in my back. I had it after my mountain biking accident to help with chronic pain. I still do one weekend a month. I go to the Salt Lake Community Acupuncture. I love being around people, and while you're getting your therapies, it's not like totally open. You have your own place, but there's other people there that are similar minded. It's great energy. You know, to have that time to just tune in. And yeah, like I was saying, you don't want to move because that can activate some chi that you didn't want to activate.
Or, you know, it's just not the most comfortable thing when they have needles in you.
But it's that quiet, like that quiet time, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, where you get to just lay. And even though you're physically not really achieving much in our very progressive minds, your body is having an opportunity to heal.
Yes. And to rest, which slows the mind. Our minds are going 90 miles an hour all the time, and it can't sustain that day in, day out, week in, week out, month, you know, year after year. Like, it needs time to recharge, just like everything else does. And sleeping is helpful when we sleep, but it's not enough. We need some breaks throughout the day too, just depending on how busy someone is. Right? And because otherwise you go too far the other direction, and then you get things like anxiety because your sympathetic nervous system is on overdrive, and your parasympathetic system doesn't know what to do anymore. So it just kind of sits there and doesn't do anything, and it doesn't shut off the fight or flight system. And then you're just running around like a crazy person all the time. And so it's nice to be able to unwind people and then help them find that solitude and to be good with it, right? Because sometimes that mentality is, if I'm not doing something, I'm not being productive, there's something wrong. And it's no. It's giving back to yourself so that you can continue to do those things, but not in a way that is detrimental to your health.
Right? I'm one of those type of people, Molly, where I seriously, and I bring this back to my yoga practice because I never recognized it until I was going through my yoga teacher training, and I had one of my instructors say this to me. Sometimes the hardest thing we can do is to cut ourselves a break and give ourselves some grace and take a break, right? There are people like myself who, if I'm going through something really hard, it's easier for me to put my head down and bull through it as fast and as hard as I can than it would be for me to take a step back and maybe go into child's pose and cut myself a little bit of grace and say, okay, like, this is hard, take a break. It took me a really long time to wrap my head around that. And we live in a society that's so full of, if you don't see results right now, then you're not accomplishing anything. You're not getting anywhere. And as good as accomplishments are, and as good as it feels to be productive, that's how workaholics are made.
Right.
Right? Like, that isn't always the best thing for ourselves, is to push harder or to give more. Like, most of the time, if we give ourselves a break and fall back and regroup, then we can start again in a healthier, more holistic way that's better for us in the bigger picture.
Right. Well, and I think that, like, just being okay with like where things are at and having faith in that you'll get there, you'll get it done. You just don't need to do it like maybe right this minute, or like in a certain way. Like sometimes the path of least resistance is the best path. you know, and just being patient with results, I think is a lesson that even I have to remind myself all the time, because the tendency is to want to push through and get over it and get beyond it. But sometimes you need to feel the journey that is leading you on this path, so that for whatever reason, whatever we learn from that is equally as important, but gets overlooked so much.
How do you make peace with the discomfort instead of
Yeah.
trying to get away from it as fast as possible, right? If you can just get through this really uncomfortable, whatever it is, right? I'm having a hard time. This is really uncomfortable. If I just get through it as fast as possible, then I'll be on the other side of it and it won't matter anymore.
Right.
When really it's about what we're learning in that discomfort. And whatever it is that's causing us discomfort. It could be a yoga pose, it could be a work project, it could be a relationship, it could be anything, right? Our health, right? If I can just overcome this difficulty and get through it, then everything will be okay again.
You grow from the discomfort.
Yeah, right? You grow from it, you learn what we learn and what we become. Like, it's not always about like point A, point B, it's about the transition. How do you get yourself from point A to point B in the safest way, but also promoting your own personal growth, right? You don't want to hurt yourself, but you also don't want to take the totally easy way out. Like, how do we transition and what do we learn in the process? And so, you know, having it in a holistic view, you know, for all things, not just different modalities of medicine, but all of our lives. And I mean, that literally is what holistic means, right? It's all aspects of our lives. So I love that. If it's okay, you were talking a lot, and this has come up with a couple of other practitioners too. The parasympathetic nervous system is such a vital tool for modern life. I mean, I think the idea of our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems and what they actually do and control is so brilliant. The body itself and just how the mechanics of it are amazing. But stress obviously is a huge problem for everyone. Everyone has stress, right? Stress is part of modern life. Is there any particular acupressure points that you could share with us that might be useful for people, like just in day-to-day life, that they might be able to just access if they are feeling more stress, or they might be in a moment where they just need a little bit of peace? What would you suggest?
Well, there's a point at the top of your trapezius muscle that's like the midway between, well, let me get my hair out of the way, between the base of your neck and the edge of your shoulder. So right in the middle on the top. And you can press down on that point, and that is a calming point. It's also one of the trigger points that massage therapists use all the time when you go there, but it's a calming point, and it helps spread the chi downwards. So it helps to calm the mind because it drives the energy down to your feet. So that one's a great one. There's one in the middle of your chest on the sternum that's in between your breasts at the level of your nipples, and right in the center. You can press on that, and it's usually sore. And that's like the chi of the chest. And that one is helpful for when you're feeling anxious or you're feeling sad, any kind of emotional disturbance, or overwhelming feeling, you can press on that, and it's also helps you breathe. So if you have a cold or um, asthma, it opens the chest, and so the release of the energy in the chest helps to restore better blood flow through your chest cavity to your heart, and so it can be calming. And then there's one on top of your foot that's in between the webbing on the first and the second toe, like right there. That is also good for, it's a widely used acupuncture point for stress. We needle that all the time.
Okay.
And just irritability and all the things that, all the emotions that stress can bring up. It's a really soothing to the body, and you can press on that rather easily, even with shoes on.
Grind your heel right into it.
Right, totally.
So with acupressure points, how long should someone put pressure on those points?
I mean, anywhere from a few minutes. The longer you do it, the more relief you can notice. But I wouldn't do it for more than like 10-15 minutes. Your fingers get tired. And at that point, it's probably reached its maximum efficacy just from stimulating that point. You can go counterclockwise or clockwise, and just to, so that, because if you apply steady pressure to a point, at some point your body will tune it out. So by massaging it a little bit, you kind of what do you call it? The brain doesn't get used to it quite as quickly, so you can do it longer with more effect.
Okay. It's funny you mentioned that the point on the sternum. And I was just reading the other day about how to stimulate your vagus nerve, because the vagus nerve is one of the main controllers of the parasympathetic nervous system. And actually, stimulating that helps to decrease heart rate. It can actually increase digestion. And I think it was in Psychology Today. I'll have to link it in the description of this video too. But that if you gently tap right where you were describing, that can stimulate your vagus nerve, because that's right where it runs. And so you talking about that point right there that stimulates the chest, the vagus nerve also controls respiratory rate, the lung function, digestion. I mean, you're hitting all of these very important systems just with that one point. And I love that you brought that up, and I just read about that because it just connected in my brain. I'm like, that's what she's talking about. And you talking about not applying steady pressure, because they were talking about tapping, but
Right.
rubbing, and because I guess tapping would kind of be along the lines of rubbing, right?
Right.
It's not something that your body will just tune out. It's something that's stimulating.
Right.
Very
There's
cool.
so many forms of, acupressure and tapping, and the touch is like one of the things that we all need and that we don't all want. But as a human and as an emotional human being, I think touch is one of the things that is really important in our healthcare, whether it's massage or whether it's acupuncture or some body work. We all need it because there's an exchange of an energy between the practitioner and the client or the patient that cannot be replaced by anything else, because humans are social animals and we need that. But modern society has kind of steered us away from that, and it's so interesting to see what happens to people's nervous systems when they are lacking touch. You can tell by touching somebody who is not used to being touched. You can immediately know that that's not something that they have had enough of. And it's part of the healing process, and it's part of the comforting process in our nervous system. So things like weighted blankets have become really popular because like the idea that the body needs touch is starting to become more mainstream, but it's not utilized like it should be.
I had an experience with a yoga student one time with that. I was coming out of my yoga teacher training and they had taught us Thai massage for parts of our for our yoga classes when you're having them in the longer yin holds that are usually a little more challenging because you have to be still and you have to make peace with discomfort. And I walked over to a student and I started to, I think it was either her lower back or her shoulders, just kind of gentle but steady pressure and a little bit of rotational massage. And she just melted and just started crying. And I didn't say anything. Obviously, we're in the middle of class, so I just gently walked away. But at the end of class, she came up to me and said, I want to thank you. I didn't realize how much I needed to be touched. And I think, yeah, when we're so separate and we're actually given a lot of reasons to not want to be connected to people, however that looks, we actually forget that touch and hugs and connection to others releases certain hormones, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, these very important hormones that have all kinds of vital uses in the body are released during touch. So yeah.
Well, and that I think explains why during the pandemic, so many people went out and got pets, right? It's like, like they needed that touch and they were stuck at home. So like, your pet is a good way of achieving something similar to that, right? And so, I mean, I didn't know that I needed a pit bull to calm my anxiety and my nervous system. He just cuddles on you and he sits on places that I didn't know I needed. And every time I go on vacation, I'm like, oh, I don't have my dog sitting on me. So my nervous system, it just feels like something's missing.
Right? He's your weighted blanket.
Right? Yeah. I don't need a weighted blanket. I have a pit bull who sleeps on top of me.
That's amazing. That's so amazing. And they do, right? Animals, and this is proven too because they use them in Western medicine, animals can tell when we need certain things. Yeah. My cat is, I will not know that I'm sore in a certain place, and I will be laying in my bed and she'll come walk on me and she'll decide that she wants to lay right on a certain spot. And then as soon as she hits it, I'm like, oh. And then she'll stay there and she'll make little kitty biscuits. And, and I swear she's doing what you're doing, right? She's like, it can't be steady pressure. It can't be steady pressure. She'll start ignoring me. It can't be steady pressure.
It's just like, pay attention to this. This is a problem, Mom.
Exactly. Just exactly like what you're talking about with your dog, right? Like they use them to smell for blood sugar and seizures and all kinds of things. Like animals are so intuitive and they know us because they're with us every day. So having connection with them too, I mean, again, releasing of oxytocin to pet your dog, to hug your dog, even if you don't want to be around people, because I know, like, I don't people, ew. You can still get that connection. It doesn't have to be human.
Right. I think the human type is preferred, which may be part of the driving reason that so many people have children, is that connection, and that, but they don't realize that they can get it in other places. I mean, it's a little different type of connection, but it's still it's similar enough that you still get the similar benefits from all of that. And so it's just, I think, not taken as a important aspect of human life and interaction. That's kind of sad. But hopefully it's gaining more traction. It is gaining more traction.
Well, we know, right, from our previous lives of veterinary medicine that people really do love and cherish their pets. Like, it's just, and I say past lives, I don't mean that in like legit. It's just our previous careers.
Right.
That's a whole other interview altogether. Like, let's not even go there. Okay, so what are some common misconceptions that you have come across with people and acupuncture and oriental medicine?
One of them is that a lot of people think acupuncture is painful, and it's not, because the word needle scares people away, because the only concept that they have of a needle is a hypodermic needle, and yes, those don't feel very good. But hypodermic needles are so much different than acupuncture needles, because those are hollow and acupuncture needles are solid, and they're much thinner. So like they are like sometimes as thin as like a strand of hair. And so you'll feel a pinch, but then after that, you don't feel much of anything most of the time. Or you feel like an ache when you hit the duchy, you get that. You'll feel an ache or tingling, and those are all normal. But most people put off coming to acupuncture because they're afraid of the needles. But then when some of them finally do come, they're like, oh, this is not anything what I expected. So that's kind of cool to see the transformation in the person, like, and kind of breaking down the barriers and the misconceptions about what they're going to be receiving and when they get acupuncture. And another one is that, acupuncture is an ancient medicine, so how can it, does it work, I suppose, is a question that comes up. And I say that, well, if acupuncture has withstood the test of time, it's been around for thousands of years, and if it didn't work, or if it was based solely on placebo effect, it would never have lasted this long. And now the recent research, the scientific research, has kind of, there's still a long way to go in acupuncture research, because it's a very difficult field to study, because there's so many variabilities that you can't account for. However, the research that has been done has discovered like proof that acupuncture points exist and that meridians exist, and by using MRI scans and CT scans, it's kind of cool to like have a scientific backing to the theories that are many thousands of years old, but they have been proven to exist and proven to work, because like there was a study done, I think it was like 10 years ago or so, how they needled an acupuncture point, and then they did an MRI or CT scan of the person. And, because stomach 36 is a digestive point, it also is a reservoir of chi, one of the bigger ones, and how like specific acupuncture points light up different areas of the brain in correlation to in different areas of the body in correlation to what that acupuncture point does. And so there's been some linking or backing in scientific evidence as to these acupuncture points really do treat these conditions or these areas of the body because of where the MRI shows the scans light up. And so it's that's interesting. Right. Research, right? Yeah. So it has its place in modern medicine now, because they can kind of repeat these experiments, but well, they're using different techniques to look into how acupuncture works, and they're finding that yes, these points treat this area of the body, and so it's exciting actually to be able to see it in modern times, something that got invented before all of this equipment and this fancy stuff that we have now, and it's still there, still works.
Well, I mean, there's evidence that traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture and herbs was one of the main reasons that they started trying to utilize writing techniques in ancient China. Like, I read that in one of my textbooks and was like, they were trying to document and write down things, and that was one of the things that drove written language. So I mean, these practices were potentially happening before the written word, at least in Asia, and were maybe one of the driving forces. And now, yeah, we're able to do MRIs and have these experiences with utilizing the acupuncture points and seeing the areas of the brain light up, and it's duplicatable. It's not just a one-off thing. They're able to do it repeatedly over and over and over again. You're right. With acupuncture, it's so difficult to remove a lot of these variables with research, right? Like, how do you placebo a needle getting put into you, right? So, but they're able to actually accurately portray it, because you have to reach the qi, right, in order to see these particular areas of the brain light up. And if the patient feels the qi, like if you just, and I guess we're going to get into like what happens with acupuncture, but you tap the needle in, and then you actually have to apply pressure and push it a little bit. I mean, I don't know, because I'm not an acupuncturist, how far you actually go in. I know that when I've had acupuncture, they have to push in until you feel the qi, which is the tingle or the sensation. I think it's kind of an interesting thing, but that is what is actually changing the area of the brain, and they're watching it light up in real time while they're doing it. Like, that is so incredible. It's beautiful. It's amazing, right? They are showing that it is actually doing something. It is not just nothing. And we're not just picking it up.
Well, and they use it with they just needle some other place on the body, not a particular acupuncture point, and it doesn't elicit the same brain response. And so I think that's important to note, because it's not just the needle entering the body, it's actually the needle entering the body at the acupuncture point, which is proven to show that it can alter the brain chemistry, and that it released endorphins and the body's pain relieving mechanisms. And also anywhere you put a needle, most anywhere you put a needle, you get better blood flow to the area. It brings in circulation. It increases circulation to the muscle or to the area of the body that it wasn't getting it before. And so it's interesting to see that with all the modern equipment that we have.
Well, it's just not something you can deny. And they show, which parts of the brain are actually activating or deactivating in certain cases. Like, and then, okay, well, that portion of the brain we've studied, and we know that it does X, Y, and Z, and this helps with chronic pain. It's incredible. It really is. So those are common misconceptions, right? It doesn't work and it's painful. Are there any other things that you've come across that you'd like to dispel from?
I think those are the main ones. Have you heard of any other ones? that I,
The one about it being very painful, right? Like people really do think that because there's needles involved, then there's going to be pain involved. And that's not been my experience with acupuncture at all.
and it shouldn't be. I mean, I guess there can be some types of acupuncture where it's more uncomfortable, but it should never be painful. Something's wrong with that, because really, truly, you're as a person who's receiving acupuncture, your goal is to be able to relax, right? And if it's painful, you're not going to be able to relax. And so, at least in my practice, you know, the discomfort should be fleeting, not something that's sustained, because you basically want to forget that you have a bunch of needles stuck in you. But I haven't found anything more profoundly relaxing as acupuncture. I mean, when you get a massage, you get that high during it, and maybe for an hour afterwards, or you get that relief where you just feel like, I feel so good. You can get it with massage, you can get it with yoga, you can get it with working out. You get that rush, but it's fleeting. With acupuncture, I mean, you can have the effect for hours to days to weeks. I mean, the more time that goes on, now obviously the effect is less noticeable, but it's still there. And it's just because of the sustained relaxation that you can get, that I think that sets it apart from all the other different modalities. Now, there may be something, because I haven't explored everything, but there may be something out there that could be comparable, but I haven't found it yet. So I'm open to exploring different options, but I always keep coming back to acupuncture because it's still the one thing that provides sustained, noticeable relief in most people. And so, and that's fun.
For sure. What about any contraindications for acupuncture?
There's not many, which is nice, but there's different. So like in pregnancy, there's specific acupuncture points that you avoid. If you are on blood thinners, there's just cautions, but you can treat patients who are taking blood thinners. It's just we need to know because we might use different needles, or we may not needle certain points depending on where they are, if they are on blood thinners, to reduce the risk of any kind of bleeding. Epilepsy is one that we typically either don't treat patients who have epilepsy, or especially if it's not well controlled, because you don't want to have a seizure. You don't want to have a patient have a seizure on the table with needles in them. That's a liability issue. And so that one is probably the bigger one. Some say diabetes because of peripheral neuropathy. If you can't feel it, you got to be careful that needling those places. But I think used cautiously, you can definitely treat patients with diabetes. But I think it's up to the level of comfort of the practitioner, for sure. So there's not that many, because acupuncture is it's actually pretty safe under most circumstances, that there's not very many conditions that we shouldn't treat. But active infections like cancer, skin infections, you don't want to put needles in places like that, because you don't want to spread the infection or make the infection worse, or spread the cancer. So those types of things definitely wouldn't see. Or in a medical crisis, like if you don't seek acupuncture if you need to go to the ER, under those circumstances, like that's contraindicated. You just go to the doctor. Do not pass go. But
yeah, for all medicine, right?
Right. Something that I can't offer you.
Right. There are some things that Western medicine has excelled at, and it's emergencies, right? If you cut your arm off that's not the time to rub cayenne pepper on it. Please go to
Right.
the emergency right now, and we can talk about your holistic health later.
Right.
You're gonna bleed out, right? Like, I wouldn't have. I when I broke my face, I would not have been like, oh, I should probably go rub some herbs on it. Like, I had a brain hemorrhage and broken bones. Like, go to the ER.
Right. Address the immediate concern now, and then we can go back later and address the other issues in a timely fashion when the emergency has passed.
Exactly. We'll deal with nerve healing and bone healing and all of those things later. Please go make sure your brain's not popping out of your eye socket,
Right.
right? I feel like that is a huge thing, right? There's a time and a place for all of it.
Mhm.
Bringing it together and being able to work it together, integrated, where Western medicine can fill in the gaps that Eastern medicine
Yep.
has, and Eastern medicine can fill in the gaps that Western medicine has. You can lessen the side effects of certain things in Western medicine by complementing them with these
Yeah.
other modalities. They complement each other. They do not have to be in, in
Adversarial.
in competition with each other.
Yeah.
They don't have to be against each other. They can work together and be very effective.
Absolutely. Because like each medicine has its own weakness, but together they make a more stronger healthcare model, which is shown over and over and over again. Because, like, for instance, you treat cancer with chemotherapy, and that leads to a lot of side effects like nausea, vomiting, inappetence. And acupuncture can help relieve some of those side effects without yet adding another medication. And so sometimes they're on so many medications to begin with, the last thing you want to do is add more. And so it's nice to have other options to pursue to get relief. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think we're about to wrap up. Is there anything else that you would like to make sure that we talk about today in order to get out as much information as we can to people?
Well, the WHO has a comprehensive list of what acupuncture can treat. I mean, that's not all encompassing, but at least it's the most widely recognized conditions. And so if you're curious about what acupuncture can treat, you can look it up on their website.
Mhm.
But I mean, there isn't a whole lot that acupuncture can't treat. I mean, obviously, we're not going to treat like active forms of cancer, but we'll be happy to see you after you've had the cancer removed and had your treatment started or in remission. And then we can talk about general health care afterwards. Or, if you have painful periods, it's not like you have to accept that the periods are debilitating or that you have to take Advil or a leave every month to be able to function. Like, there are other options out there to get relief that's more gentle and sometimes more effective, because we actually try to solve the root problem of the condition as opposed to just managing the symptoms. And I think that that's what makes acupuncture more powerful sometimes than Western medicine, because we can actually affect the reason that the problem exists in the first place. Now, not everything can be treated with the root, but we sure as heck can try.
It's like peeling an onion,
Yeah.
right? You can treat one layer, but then you peel that layer off and there's another layer underneath. And actually getting to the root of the problem, you can treat one root cause and then recognize that there's an entire another system that potentially needs activation or needs to be decreased. So it's not just a one size fits all thing. And
Yeah.
when you're trying to treat the root cause, it's very complex, and it's more than just treating a symptom, right? You're really going after what is underlying, and each system coordinates with itself so much that there's not just one system that you can be like, oh yeah, I could fix that, and then you do correct that, but there might be another system that's out of balance that you didn't see any symptoms until you corrected what was the original complaint, I guess. Am I making any sense, or am I shooting in the dark?
No, totally. Yeah, it is peeling an onion, because like what the person may come in for may be a different reason altogether as to why they end up staying with you or seeking further treatment. Because yes, like I sprained my ankle and want this to be treated, and then through the experience of having acupuncture, they realize how stressed out they are, how anxious or depressed they feel. And so then they're like, oh, that's been so much better. Can we treat that now? And so it's like a journey that you can help people take to better themselves or better their quality of life and their health. And that's always the fun journey for me, is to help them identify within themselves that they are capable of doing this, and they're actively participating in their own healthcare. Because so many people say, okay, just fix me. I'm here, fix me. And I'm like, that's not how this works. This is a team effort. I will help you fix what's going on, but it all starts with you. You have to be the person who spearheads the whole operation, because without you, there is none of the other stuff. And so just identifying that or helping people learn that is cool, is a passion.
So important, right? That people feel empowered in their own healing. That is something that I try to stress so much with my clients, is that your healing is your responsibility. I am not a healer. Your healing is not my responsibility. I'm here to support you
Yes.
in your health journey and on your spectrum of wellness to get you to your ultimate place of well-being, whatever that looks like for you. It's going to be different for everybody.
Right.
But your healing is not my responsibility.
It is yours. Yeah.
You are going to be the one putting the food in your mouth. You're going to be the one that does the movement that we put together for you. You're going to be the one that decides when you put your phone down and go to sleep.
Right.
Like, I'm not holding those cards for you. All of this stuff, whether or not you choose to do your meditation every day, whatever you want to do, that is your responsibility. I will support you however I can, but your healing is not on me.
Yes. Because
Right?
so many people, it's just like when you go to your doctor, be like, what's wrong with me? Fix me, is the attitude, right? And I'm like, well, I guess I can understand how we got there, but like, no, this is still your body, and this is still you, and you are responsible for you. And don't hand over that responsibility to someone else, because are you going to trust that other person to understand the intricacies of you? They may not know, because you're the one that lives with yourself every day, and you see how your body functions every day. Whether you choose to or not is up to you, but you have that ability. And so that is more information than what somebody on the outside is going to glean from. And so it's not something that you should entrust entirely to somebody else. Like, you need to pay attention to yourself and your body and how you feel, because that tells you what's going on. And it's so important. And so, yes, healthcare should be a collaborative event and not just wanting a quick fix. right? It's not, sometimes it is about the quick fix, which you get pain meds and antibiotics. Sometimes you need that first, but it shouldn't be the only, and it shouldn't stop there. It goes beyond that in so many different ways, that there's more to your health and well-being. There's quality of life, and there's happiness, which leads into quality of life. But like, that's all something that is attainable by you if you choose to seek out those things. And sometimes, even though you seek those out, you still need some more help. And so, that is great at that point to seek out that help to get you to that place. But, it's still your responsibility.
It's a team effort, and
Yes.
it's very important that the client or the patient sees themselves as part of that collaborative care team, and that they are also very accountable and very responsible for the outcomes of their plans, however that looks.
Well, and I think that like nutrition has never been, I don't think, something that many people either educate themselves about or know about, like the importance of proper nutrition. It is not something we are taught in school, at least not when I was going to school. And so but I think that, we need to at least take into consideration that food is our medicine. It's a form of medicine. It's not something just to get it over with and shove whatever in your mouth and move on. Like, what you put in your mouth and the quality of the food that you put in there has a direct effect on your health. And I think that is lost in translation for a lot of people. So like, we view food as an inconvenience a lot of times, when it should be viewed as something that is a type of medicine that fuels your body. And if you don't feel well, then let's look at your diet to see if we can help you feel better, because it all starts to as basic building blocks as that. That's the one thing that you can do on a daily basis that either improves or hinders your health. But that connection is lost, I think, in so many ways in society.
Modern life has removed the importance of quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Right? Cheap, fast, easy. I want it fast, I want it cheap, and I want it easy. And those things don't go with a balanced view on diet, right? Different nutritional items are required for your diet. I know that that is a huge part of Oriental medicine is nutrition, and it's based on some really interesting concepts that we didn't even get to. I thought we were going to get to some more. The 5 elements and different herbs that go along with that, and talking about the yin and yang organs. We're going to have to do a part 2, I think. But yeah, that nutrition in itself is a vital part of health, and it's often overlooked. Nutrition is way too often overlooked. And I think even people, and I want to make sure I say this right because I know I'm going to make some people angry. I think even people who think they're being really healthy, people who are very concerned about their bodily fitness, are not eating healthy diets. They're always in calorie deficit because they want to control the muscle definition, or they want to have those 6-pack abs, or they're worried about leg day, and they're eating iceberg lettuce and boiled chicken breast for their diet. And they think that that's a healthy diet because it's got protein and it's got fiber in it. And then they're wondering why they have joint injuries and ligament tears and headaches and all of these different things. Like, it's very important to look at nutritional content and not just calories consumed, I think is my point. And I know I'm going to make some people really angry because I have a lot of fitness buffs that are like this, that I'm sure are going to watch this. But, and I'm sorry if I made anyone angry, but it's true. I think that you really have to be mindful of nutrient density rather than I want to lose weight or I want my body to look a certain way.
Right. And then that's the danger in following like diets. Because a lot of clients will ask me like, well, what diet do you recommend? And I'm like, I don't recommend a specific diet. I just recommend eating a balanced, healthy meals that are not processed and not high in sugar and not loaded with preservatives. So like cooking at home. Like,
right?
I mean, doesn't mean that you can't have the other things, but you definitely shouldn't have them every day, right? And so everything in moderation, because like I don't like any of the diets because they're too, like, keto is not a balanced diet. Most of these are not balanced, but like, I can lean more or support more of like paleo diet versus keto versus like Atkins and all that. Like, because they're just too drastic and they cut out too many important food groups that I'm like, So I kind of lean more towards just like healthy whole foods that aren't processed. The minimally processed is better in a wide variety of different things. And a lot of people will say I eat healthy. Well, what does that mean? That differs from person to person, depending on their level of research that they done themselves and things. And the most common notion is that salads are healthy. And I'm like, well, they are sort of, but like actually cooked vegetables is actually more healthy for you, because raw salads are hard on the body to process. In small quantities it's fine, but not as like your go-to main meal. Like that's not a balanced meal. You have to, in conjunction with something else, sure, usually cooked food, because Chinese medicine is really big on cooking your food to some degree or another. And because it's warm, and so cold food is shocking to your digestive system because it's cold and raw, and makes your body have to work harder to process it. And it saps all the heat out of your digestive system because it has to warm up these cold foods. And so easily digestible foods is usually at least cooked to some degree. And it's easier to digest, and it's and less processed means less work for the digestive system and less byproducts that get formed by digesting the foods. And so I was like, well, healthy foods just means a balanced, mostly cooked diet that has all the food groups. Like, you can have carbohydrates, but it shouldn't be in the form of breads per se, but it should be more like complex carbohydrates like potatoes and sweet potatoes and grains and things like that. Those are better. You still have to be careful if you're diabetic, but you can still have them. You just have to do them in moderation. So I think everything we eat can be in moderation. You don't have to, we have one life to live. Food should be enjoyed, right? And I would like to see it used more as a friend rather as a foe. Because so many people with eating disorders view food as their enemy. And I think that is an unfortunate viewpoint on it. It is something that can make us, helps, it fuels our body to do the things that we ask it to do day in and day out on a daily activity. And it also influences directly like your hormone production and your brain chemistry, like your happy juices and your sad juices and all the things that make you human and all the range of emotions. But your food what you feed yourself can dictate those emotions sometimes. And I think that if we took a more inclusive viewpoint on what food, how important food is and what it does for our bodies, that we could actually utilize it better to cure certain conditions or help us feel more fulfilled or happy or something, make our life a little easier, or have suffer less health issues because of it.
Well, and you brought up a really good point, right? People's relationship with food is very important. And there is a such thing as orthorexia. I have had an experience recently, right, where people are super restrictive about their diets under the guise of being healthy. And they remove a lot of food groups. They remove gluten, they remove sugar, they remove meat, they remove and get really restrictive. And it actually becomes an obsession and a disorder. And I think people need to be aware of that. There is an unhealthy obsession with being healthy, because we can get addicted to anything, right? Anything can become an obsession and an addiction. And diets, particularly fad diets, are so restrictive. And that impacts your relationship with food.
Mm-hmm.
You should have a good relationship with food, just like you have a good connection to people or your pets or yourself. There is a relationship with food, and knowing that you need to have it in a healthy relationship with food, not just super restrictive. It needs to be tailored to your person, because we're all individual. We all have individual things going on with our wellness and our well-being. If you're more stressed out, then maybe eating more baked type casserole foods, eggplant, like oven, I start thinking about like foods that are more hearty, that are warm and comforting, and being able to really enjoy them, right? Like I have all these dishes that are popping up into my head, and I don't even know if it's got any basis to it, right? But I would assume, like eggplant parmesan sounds good, or like a really nice homemade chicken pot pie. Getting home, making the food and preparing the food is actually a really important part of the process too. It can almost be meditative, where you're going through a process, you're in the moment, you're having that connection with the food. Like relationship to food is a huge dimension in your health.
Right.
So exactly what you're talking about. I couldn't agree more.
It's like what do you call it? It's the energy that you put into preparing your food that gets translated back into you, right? So you replenish that energy by consuming that food that you just spent all this time and effort making, right? And so that is something that you do for yourself by feeding yourself. And so when you look at food as an adversary, you don't get that connection and you don't get that fulfillment in the body when you finally eat that food, because you're like, oh, I have to eat this, and it's not an enjoyable thing. It's like a stressful thing, and it's not the same. And so yes, it is, that whole ritual is definitely impacts our psyche and our bodies, for sure.
Well, Molly, I am going to let you go. I know that I have taken up a lot of your time today, and I want to thank you again so much for taking the time to talk to me about all of this. I did have a lot of other things that I wanted to ask you about. So maybe, we could do a part 2 if you enjoyed this and we were able to get some of the butterflies out. But I want to thank you so much. You've given us so much good information, and I will touch base with you and see if we can't get something else going together for a part 2.
Okay. I'd love it.
You have a fantastic day, okay?
You too. We'll talk to you soon.